Good evening. I don't know where you are in the world, but I know that it is late afternoon, not even that late. It's about 3:30 here, and I have an interview to do. And I am interviewing wait, I didn't even introduce myself. This is Carla from the Ministry for English Language, English literacy, not language. And I am here to speak with Afera Fayyaz about English literacy and how it can be best used around the world. She will explain about her background in a few minutes, but I'll tell you she lives in Islamabad, Pakistan, and she works for the British Council. And she's a very, very interesting young woman, and I'm all excited to speak with her. Having said that, I want to remind you that this interview, like all of my interviews, is sponsored by the Institute of Peace, which is an online organization promoting peace one conversation at a time. Afera, can you please introduce yourself and maybe even tell people what your name means? Because it's very, very interesting.
Thank you, Carla. Thank you for the introduction. Hi, everybody. I'm Afera Fayyaz. I'm originally from Abu Dhabi, UAE. My name is Arabic. The origin of my name is Arabic, and it means beautiful deer. I have been teaching most of my life and turned to training, and I really, really enjoy training. And with British Council, I have been training. Not just British Council, I've also trained with Berlitz Language Institute. Currently, I'm also training where I'm working at. It's an Amazon-based IT company. So that's a little bit about me. If you have further questions, you can leave in the comments.
Well, let's start a little more about you. Where were you born?
I was actually born in Abu Dhabi. I had my early education from there as well.
And were obviously your father and mother were living there. What made the move back to Pakistan?
We moved back to Pakistan. One of the reasons why my grandmother was gravely ill, and also we had to continue our higher studies. And at the time, Abu Dhabi didn't have renowned university that it does now. So that's why we moved to Pakistan.
So, how old were you when you moved back?
I was, I guess, in high school at the time.
And was that your first trip to Pakistan, or?
No, we often used to come to Pakistan during our vacations, during our holidays.
Wow. So you were visiting and you knew something about Pakistan.
Yes, absolutely.
And tell me a little about your love for English, because that fascinates me when people say, I wanted to learn English because I love English. Can you tell me a little about your journey with that?
For me, English is it's like a language where first, it's an international language. Everybody understands, most people at least understand. So for me, one thing that I'm a Pakistani, and also Muslim, one concept that we learn from our religion is that if you want to communicate, you need to learn the language. So for me, if I want to communicate my perception and my beliefs and my views to the world, then I need to learn the language. And I think English is one way of doing that. It's internationally known. A lot of people understand it. So if you want to communicate your perception, or if you want to understand something completely, then you need to learn the language. That's what drew me to the language itself. And that's why I want others to realize this concept and realize the importance of learning the language. And I want to help others for the very reason. It's understanding, because understanding eliminates miscommunication, eliminates misconceptions, and that brings people together. So I think language plays a huge part in making the world a global community.
And I agree, because it's language, how we communicate.
Yeah.
However, the one thing that always comes back to me, and I'm wondering if you agree the same, we all think a little differently. So do
Yes.
we use language in the same way? You know?
Um, it depends. It yes and no. It depends on how. Let's suppose if you're a teacher, you're communicating to the students, your communication is different, of course. Similarly, if your teacher communicating to your peers, your communication would be different. Your teacher communicating to your own family or your relatives, your communication would be different. If you're communicating to the parents of the students, your communication would be different. I'm just giving an idea of a person who has to do different communications, looking at the person that they're communicating with. So yes, it varies. Similarly, where I'm a trainer, I'll be communicating differently. Like I'm communicating differently with you, I'll be communicating differently with my learners, with my participants. I will be communicating differently with my peers who are also trainers. And my communication with my friends is different. My communication with my family is different. So if when it comes to business, your business communication is altogether different as well. So it varies with the clients, it varies with the person, it varies with the person who's at the receiving end. So your communication does vary. And so does the way people communicate in terms of how in terms of what the situation is, in terms of who they are communicating with.
Okay, now that we've mentioned that, and I have noticed this in the work I do, that sometimes, even in speaking, we don't always understand what the other person, what someone is saying. So, how can, and part of it is because of listening skills. Have
Absolutely.
you, and can I even suggest that you speak a little slower so the people who are not well versed in listening to English can understand you a little better? I don't know if you give that tip to the people who you are training.
I do. I looking at the audience. As a trainer, you the first thing you want to do is build a rapport with your audience, with your participants and your learners. Once you've gotten an idea of who who they are and how much they understand, you modify or you customize your communication according to their needs. If there are people who are not well versed in English, then you go according to their learning ability or their understanding. So, for example, if there are people who understand only Urdu, so I would revert to Urdu at times so that they also feel part of the learning process. They also feel included. If there are people who do understand English but are not well versed at it, so I will go maybe I would still communicate in English, but maybe use simpler words, not using any jargons, not going as fluently as I would be talking to a person who is well versed at English. So yes, that does vary with the person. Again, like I said earlier, the person at the receiving end, you need to look at their needs and you need to customize your communication according to them for there to be no misconception or no misunderstanding. If you're not doing that, then of course the person at the receiving end may perceive it differently. So and when that happens, the communication itself is not efficient. So for efficient communication, it's important to customize your modes of communication according to the person at the receiving end. I hope that answered your question.
You are answering the question. Today, when I was doing my Learn English by Speaking English show, I had two gentlemen come in, each having a problem understanding English. And, there's definitely a problem when you're speaking to someone from who's a native, I hate to say, a native English speaker or grew up speaking English, and people who, second language is English and they've been speaking it for a while that way. So there's always that communication problem. And what I noticed, and I bring that up to them, I said, don't feel bad if you don't understand me. It's practice. It's absolutely normal.
Yes.
Relax. But what I had someone there who was a native Urdu speaker, but speaks beautiful, beautiful English. And during that time, I had him, because I don't normally do this. I said, speak to him in, try speaking to them in Urdu and see if we can get through. And we didn't, which was a little surprising. And I'm wondering how we can help people learn to listen better. Often they say, hey, I know what you're saying. I don't need to listen anymore. But that may not be the case. And I wonder your take on this.
My take on this would be, I actually want to quote somebody over here. Riz Ahmed recently did a movie, The Sound of Me, did a movie about a drummer who loses his hearing and has to learn sign language.
Oh,
yes, and one thing during one of his interviews promoting that movie was, he said that we often hear people, but we don't really listen to them. So listening is not just the words that people speak, it's listening to what the message is, what they're trying to communicate. It doesn't have to be the words, it can be the facial expressions, it can be the body language. So all of these elements put together are, it's the message itself, it's the communication itself. So if you're not able to understand somebody's words, if somebody spoke Italian in front of me, if I'm watching an Italian movie, of course I wouldn't be able to understand. But looking at the emotions, looking at the expressions, I would realize this person is happy, this person is sad. You start putting clues together, start understanding what the story is. So exactly the same way we have to, when you're communicating, listening is listening to the entire person's body language, their gestures, their facial expressions, the sound of the voice, even the tone of the voice. Let's say if I'm excited, somebody won, for example, my country won a match, I'd be like, yay! So you pick up on those clues. So listening is listening to all these clues, and that's when you start realizing what the person is trying to communicate. You don't have to be fluent at a particular language to understand or to even communicate. Once you start realizing that communication is more than just these words of the language. So language itself is all of these things put together. So for somebody who's a native Italian, if I have to communicate, I know I can. I know certain words that I can use and still go along and communicate or deliver my message to them. So that's what I would say to any native speaker of any language is, if you want to, you need to be willing to listen, is very important. once you're willing to do that, then you open your mind and start picking on these clues. That's going to really help in effective communication.
It was very interesting. I like how you said that. It was very interesting because both men who came were men who actually they were kids in some ways. They were under 30 and they didn't seem to understand that you need to listen. And I had someone speak to them in Urdu in order to help. And it was very interesting. They were still speaking while he was speaking. And finally he said to me, they're not listening. He's not listening to me. He's talking while I'm talking. And I thought, oh, my kid got the point, you know? So,
Exactly.
yeah, it was fascinating to watch. You know, I took myself out in order to see if it was me, and I knew part of it was, but was it completely me? So going back to listening, how are you teaching people to learn to listen better?
Like I said, for my inspiration for listening is not just listening to the words, but listening to their body language, listening to their facial expressions. And for that, it's important to clarify and verify. For example, you have said a statement to me. I may have perceived it in a different way, and the first thing I should do is to listen clearly to understand it. Part of listening is to understand what the person has communicated. So for that, you need to verify what the person has said. Maybe my perception or the way I uh, heard it came across differently than how you meant it. So it's important to verify if that was actually the message. It often happens, especially with the Zoom meetings, with the text messaging. Oftentimes, we are not able to look at the person's body or look at the person's face if you're not on video cam, and we misunderstand what the person is saying. So, unfortunately, we need to be open to again be open to be willing to understand. And best part about that is when, for example, if you're doing a podcast, is to verify: is this what you mean? Is this what you're asking? And once you do that, then you both come on the same page, and that's how you can take it forward. And that's what we teach our learners as well. It's what we train our learners is to try and be open to understanding, try and ask them, verify, pick up on these clues, and be open to the fact that the person may have a different perception than you do, different belief than you do. You do not have to be on the same page at all times. You do not have to agree on the same point. Everybody has their own beliefs. So part of listening is understanding that it's okay to disagree on matters, and they should not affect your communication or your relationship with people. So that's what how we try and incorporate listening into our trainings. Listen to the message of what the person is trying to communicate.
Okay, I want to go a little deeper in this because the comprehension has become a real big thing for me. We're saying,
Okay.
listen, listen, listen. But do we really understand what is meant by listening? Listening is not, I felt like these two guys were saying, oh, I'm going to have an answer for her before she even asks the question. And that's not a conversation. What do you say to that? And how can I help people change their thinking when it comes to that?
That's a very good question. Actually, a lot of people do have preconceived notions or preconceived bias when they enter into a conference they are not well aware of. So it's pretty normal. To make that a norm, we need to have more people and more native people and communicate with them in ways that they understand it's okay to come to a conference where you're not able to understand the language. But not just the language, you are there to learn. Learning does not just happen with the words. Like I said earlier, it happens with a lot of elements. So maybe using visuals at times. For example, if I really like, there are a lot of shows out there or even news channels, they use sign language for people who are unable to hear.
Yeah.
So maybe, yeah, so sign language for people who may be able to understand, it's including them. That makes them feel included, they are encouraged, they want to learn more. Similarly, maybe if we include some terms or some words of the native language that can help. Also, we can use visuals. We can use pictures to communicate, and we can use videos to communicate where they can understand, okay, so they have looked into the fact that we are not able to understand the language, but they want us to learn, they want us to grow. That's why they've made this effort for us. So once they get that feeling that we are included, they care for us, they value us, that's when people are really eager to learn and they want to listen more. So that's when they start actually listening and understanding, because they now realize that, oh, it is for me, it is not for everybody else, it's for me. So everybody feels included. So I would say in this particular aspect, inclusion matters a lot, because when you are in a conference, you want the message is not just for one person, it is for everybody. So it has to be a customized according to the audience, according to the people in the conference, according to the people in the meeting. Oftentimes in trainings, we have people who do not speak English at all. For those people, we translate. I often translate, or I use visuals where I know they can relate to them. So that helps them. And so it's a whole good feeling when you realize that your learner is actually feeling valued and they respond you the way you kind of want them to, or your goal of the whole communication, the whole conference is getting along its way. So I would say inclusion and using some props and visuals for that, so that they feel valued and then start listening, like properly understanding and comprehending what the gist of the message is.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I have watched this happen many times in the past almost 4.5 years now, where people are ready to respond. I'll tell you whatever you want in English. And they talk, which is good. It sounds good. But that I didn't talk to you about that. I'll never forget, there was a gentleman that I spoke to, and I was speaking to these people every day. And what I realized, he would give me a topic of what he wanted to speak about. And he would speak, and tell these wonderful, heartwarming stories. But the moment I asked him a question about it to clarify, it was like, oh my gosh, he really doesn't understand. Do you see that happening with the work you do?
Yes. Oftentimes people, when they are, especially when they're speaking on a particular topic, I would say they are presenting, is when they sort of memorize what they have to say. So at times they don't even write the topic themselves. They understand the topic and they have somebody write it for them, and then they kind of memorize and speak it out. And often, yeah, that happens. So for if you ask them questions, if you want clarity on something, or if you want to indulge in deeper conversations with them on a certain part of the presentation, they're reluctant to do that. They're hesitant to do that. They oftentimes are confused. They are not able to answer. And for me personally, I do not encourage, if they are not able to speak in English specifically, then ask them, you can revert to Urdu. And then if you, even then you're able to deliver or clarify what I'm asking, I'm comfortable with that. I realize that it doesn't happen all the time. There are people who still have not put in the effort for that particular topic, so they're not able to uh, clarify the matter because they haven't really thought about, oh, somebody might ask me this question. So when you are presenting or when you are researching for any topic, it's important to realize people may ask you questions, because the way you have looked into it is just your one person perspective. How the other person, who is a totally uh, complete individual, complete intellectual with their own perception, their own thinking, they may perceive it differently. So they would want clarity on it. Or they would think in a way where they want some more discussion to be held on the topic. So it's important to keep that in mind, and while you're presenting or speaking, and keep that flexibility and margin where you understand what you're actually saying, even if you have memorized it, you understand that, and then you try and clarify that person's question, because that's what communication is. Like I said earlier, it's to verify. uh, Effective communication only happens when you verify what the person is asking, what the person has said, and coming to a point where they are in agreement to an extent. So that unfortunately a lot of people just do that, but we encourage people to, uh, even if they do not want to speak English, they can speak in their native language, but to understand what they're delivering. What you're delivering, you need to have a good command over it. Otherwise, it's just like you can go on any channel online and just watch a video. That wouldn't be engaging, that wouldn't be interactive. Because if you're face to face with somebody, like we are having this conversation, that this is what makes it unique, that we are cross questioning and you're asking questions, we are just having a conversation about it, indulging into deeper conversations. When you're watching something online, it's just you to watch it and then it's over. So you take from it whatever you can. This way at least you get clarity when you are having a conversation. You get clarity, you learn something new, because once you indulge in deeper conversations, some new concepts come out. And so it's important to be able to have command over what you're delivering.
How can we help people understand that? I felt really bad. I'm like, they're coming to the show, they want to improve their English, but we're not communicating. You are not listening. And I know it's not because they're not trying, but they don't understand. And my English show is mainly just communicating, talking, feeling comfortable speaking English.
For that, I think a lot of the reluctance comes from the fact that a lot of people have this misconception, especially if you're not a native speaker, is that what I will say would come across silly, would come across uh, incorrect English. So what people who are not native speakers need to understand is it's okay to not speak grammatically accurate or fluent English. You need to keep that in mind. This is, for me, English is not my native language. So it's okay for me to make mistakes as long as I am able to deliver my message. For people who are reluctant to do that, please keep this in mind that it's okay to not be fluent at it. This is not your mother tongue. Keeping that in mind. So when you keep this thought at the back of your head, keep take it out of your mind, and that's when you speak, you are able to at least deliver your message. That's what's really important. Whatever words you choose, however incorrect that English might be, but at least you're able to communicate, and that's what's important to overcome that reluctance of incorrect or not speaking fluently like everybody else. So you need to have that confidence. It's okay to speak however you're comfortable. That's really important. The one thing that I would like to mention here is I oftentimes had this uh, uh, situation during my Berlitz time where people would have to come and speak in English to each other. So imagine a person who's not a native speaker, who's a learner, speaking to another learner. And that what helped them was that because they were on the same level, so they felt comfortable talking to each other rather than talking to me. So oftentimes when I'd ask them, let's do a conversation between you and me, they'd be a bit reluctant because, of course, I was the trainer. But when they'd be having the conversation with a fellow colleague or a peer or who was a learner just like them, they were comfortable because they knew this person knows as much as I do. I'm comfortable with this person. It's like, students talking to each other. They are comfortable with each other more than they're comfortable with the teacher. That's a weird dilemma, but that does actually help. So for people who are coming to the conference who are reluctant to do so, maybe we can have them talking to somebody of the same level to give them the idea it's okay to speak, even if it's inaccurate. Just speak your heart out. It's important. It's when you overcome this reluctance, overcome this sort of lack of, I would say, confidence in yourself, this little insecurity. Once you overcome that and you open your mind to it's okay to not feel ashamed about it, because we, again, like I said, not native speakers, so not to feel ashamed about it. Let yourself loose a little and speak your heart. So it's going to really help uh, doing that.
And
You
I
just
love
need to have that open mind and an open heart for that.
and I love what you said about that. Both of these guys were, I don't understand you. And I said, yes, I know, but you need to tell me that. I can't look at you, explain to me what you don't understand. And then they went on a totally different tangent. And it was just fascinating to watch that going on. And although we had someone speaking to them in Urdu, we weren't getting any further. So I'm not sure it's an English language. It's not just an English language issue or a second language issue. I think it's more of an issue where people need to learn to close their mouth and use both ears. What do
And
you think?
open their minds too,
Right.
not just the ears. Because if you're, like I said earlier, if you're coming with a preconceived bias or a preconceived perception about something, you would not be open to, or you would be very reluctant to actually a new idea. For them, this would be a new idea, somebody speaking in English and learning something from them. So if you're coming with this thing, oh, I know I won't understand, of course you would not be able to, because you came with this mindset. But if you're coming with the mindset, you know what, I'm gonna give it my best, I'll try and understand, even if it's 1%, I'm just gonna try and understand what the person is saying. When you come in with this learning and this open-minded mindset, then of course you'll not leave empty-handed. You'll take something with you for sure, even if it's one portion of the entire session, maybe two portions of the session, even one or few things. You're taking something with you. Progress is still progress, even if it's very little, if even it's very slow. We don't understand this even today. It's we need to realize that learning, everybody learns at their own pace, at their own time, at their own ability. So you do not learn on the same level like everybody else. So do not compare yourself to others and learn at your own pace. It's okay to just learn a few things, but please come with an open mind. Please
Right.
put that perception behind. Yeah. Listen, and actually open your mind to actually learning something new.
And that's so important. And one of the things that I have observed through the years, and I'm pretty new at it, it's only a little over 4 years, is that people come with, oh, I can't do it. And I say to them, if you say you cannot do it, and you told me that beautifully, you can do it. Take not out of your vocabulary. And it's so funny, but I don't know enough English. Today, someone came in and I asked him to introduce himself, and the guy told me his name, he told me where he lived, he told me what he was studying, and a few other things without me intervening. And I have a friend coming to join me right now.
Hello, what's his name?
His name is, show yourself, you're such a pretty baby. This is Krishna.
Oh, cute.
And he is
Hello.
Aren't you? You're a little troublemaker. More than a little one, but we won't go into that. But you know, the whole point is helping these people realize I don't expect you to be perfect. But he said it perfectly. And I said, why are you saying you cannot introduce yourself? And he looked at me, he said, I don't know. And I said, you just did it beautifully. I couldn't have asked for a better introduction. Oh, really? Yeah. And it was his first time on camera. Needless to say, he left feeling, oh, I learned something.
Absolutely. Like I said, a lot of people have this reluctance that speaking like a native is really important for you to actually be able to communicate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So keeping that perception out of your mind is really important, because that's creating, that's constraining your communication. That's there's a hurdle that's in your mind, that perception that's making it difficult for you to communicate. So once you keep that out of your head, out of your mind, and just speak whatever comes to your mind, speak whatever words that you can use to communicate, just go ahead. I think we need to, that's what I cannot emphasize enough, is open-mindedness to learning something new and leaving those old biases behind. It's really important.
And when you learn something new, you're going to make mistakes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If you don't understand, you're going to make mistakes, then you're not going to learn.
Absolutely. And once you make mistakes, you learn a lot from your mistakes that you never forget. So
I always say, come and make mistakes. And they're
exactly.
like, I don't want to make a mistake. Everyone will laugh at me. And so what? Who cares?
Exactly. It's like you learn baking and you do not make the perfect cake the first time, the second time, the third time. Eventually, you will make it perfectly. You just need to keep trying. And once you make the mistakes, you start realizing, oh, I need to, the baking soda was not enough, or this cocoa powder was the wrong proportion. So, giving this as just an analogy that learning requires you to make mistakes, and when you do those mistakes you learn from them, and once you learn from your mistakes you never forget it. So it's really important. It's okay, we all humans, we are allowed to make mistakes here and there, as long as it's not harmful for anybody, but we learn from our mistakes is important. And again, keep open mind and keep trying, because willingness to learn has to be there, willingness to grow and learn and uh, grasp whatever you can has to be there for you to actually understand.
And I want to thank you for such a wonderful and enlightening conversation. Do you have any words that you want to leave our audience with?
Absolutely. Something I live by myself is always be kind and be polite, because you do not know what the other person is going through in their life. So always be kind to whoever you are with, no matter their position, no matter their status, no matter their religion, their culture. Kindness is the best and the most beautiful language I think they could ever be. And we all need it, abundance of
And,
it.
and the cool thing about kindness, it could be not even speaking a word, giving out a smile,
Absolutely.
taking
Exactly.
a
A
deep,
gesture, just a gesture of a
getting,
smile.
right, or getting, letting out a laugh, or just looking at some, feeding a cat.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
kindness doesn't mean words. Kindness means
Absolutely.
an attitude.
Yes, absolutely.
I want to thank you for speaking with me tonight and
Thank
taking,
you, Carla, for having me. Thank you so much.
and you'll be joining my conference on Monday, November 8th, where we will be talking more about communication and the importance of communication,
Absolutely.
which includes listening and speaking. So I want to remind you that this show was sponsored by the Institute of Peace, which is an institute promoting peace one conversation at a time. And can we wave goodbye?
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody. Thank you,
Everyone.
Carla. Take care. Bye.
Don't go anywhere.